Give me a fragment of your time, and I will show you that what you have been calling weakness is not real. It is not part of your essence. It is an illusion born out of repetition, a story you have told yourself so many times that you mistook it for truth. This weakness is not your nature. It is a mask that has been pressed upon you, and you have carried it for so long that you now believe it to be your identity. If you are willing to step beyond the surface, if you are willing to listen not for comfort, but for confrontation, then you will feel something within you break. What emerges from that fracture will not be a new version of yourself, but the original one, the one that has been waiting silently beneath layers of compromise and self-denial. Friedrich Nietzsche never attempted to soothe the fragile. He did not write for those who demanded endless reassurance. His words were aimed at the strong in potential, those who were willing to confront existence without illusions, those who had grown weary of their own excuses. Nietzsche did not speak to people who waited endlessly for help that never arrived. He spoke to those who understood that no savior was coming, that life demanded confrontation, and that strength had to be claimed rather than gifted. If you have reached this point, it is because you already sense that nothing external will solve what gnaws at you. You are the one who must rise. Weakness, as Nietzsche would define it, is not the presence of emotion, nor the lack of physical power. Weakness is emotional submission. It is the endless search for permission, the tendency to seek validation from those who cannot even comprehend their own direction. Weakness disguises itself as humility, when in fact it is fear. It cloaks itself in politeness, while quietly betraying your own instincts. Weakness is not the absence of strength, but the betrayal of it, the silent agreement to trade truth for comfort, to label avoidance as peace, and to call hesitation virtue. The world you live in thrives upon this confusion. Schools teach you to obey rather than to think. Culture praises conformity rather than authenticity. Media feeds you with despair disguised as awareness. Even the people who claim to love you often prefer your softness because it makes you manageable, predictable, and dependent. They reward hesitation with praise. They applaud restraint not because it serves you, but because it keeps you small. Nietzsche saw this with brutal clarity. Society molds the individual into a creature that is safe, tamed, and domesticated. To resist this molding requires struggle, not merely physical struggle, but a deeper psychological resistance. That resistance begins with the refusal to confuse weakness with goodness. You have been trained to think that saying no is rude, that asserting your boundaries is selfish, that choosing yourself is narcissism. Nietzsche overturned all of this. He argued that real strength comes from rejecting the comfort of the collective, from refusing the safety of conformity, from letting go of the desperate need to be liked. Strength is not created through constant agreement, but through the willingness to stand apart, even when it demands solitude. So ask yourself directly, who are you without the craving for approval? Strip away the layers you put on each day in order to be tolerated. If nobody demanded that you be agreeable, or soft, or endlessly accommodating, what would remain? What truths would you speak without trembling? What would you refuse to accept even at the cost of belonging? Most people cannot answer these questions because their entire lives are sculpted by feedback. They have constructed masks instead of identities. Nietzsche despised this surrender because he saw it as the slow death of the human spirit. You feel this death already, do you not? That quiet resentment that never leaves, that constant fatigue that no amount of sleep cures, that silent frustration when you notice yourself hiding once again. This is not exhaustion. It is the toll of weakness. It is the cost of betraying your instincts in order to remain convenient to others. Nietzsche's words strike here with force. You are not born to be endlessly tolerant. You are not born to fold every time disapproval appeared. You were born to embody something sharp, something unshakable, something primal. And yet you have denied that part of yourself for so long that you have begun to believe it never existed. But it does. It is waiting. And when you begin to call it forth, weakness loses its hold. You realize it was never your nature, but your training. The path ahead is not about inventing strength, but uncovering it. Strength begins with the smallest details, with the unnoticed habits that shape your inner landscape. Weakness is not always loud. It does not always arrive as collapse or failure. It seeps in quietly, hiding inside the patterns you repeat every day. When you awaken and the first thing you do is surrender your attention to a screen, you begin the day in defeat. It is not that the device is evil, but that you gave away your command before even standing. You allowed your first act to be reactive instead of creative. Each time you choose reaction over initiation, you erode the muscle of sovereignty. Your independence weakens, not through a dramatic event, but through hundreds of small concessions. Nietzsche reminded us that he who cannot obey himself will be commanded. To obey yourself is to claim your mornings, your thoughts, your body, your speech. Weakness hides in the ways you bend yourself to appear harmless. It reveals itself when you whisper instead of speaking clearly, when you soften your words so others will not feel threatened, when you say, "I do not know though you do," or when you apologize for existing. Every unnecessary apology, every diluted statement is a leak in your strength, and others sense it. That is why they talk over you, why they dismiss your words, why they underestimate your presence. You taught them that you will shrink. Clarity is power. It is not about volume. It is about precision. When you speak with clarity, people pause. They lean in. They recognize the weight of your words because you did not dilute them with excuses. Nietzsche never whispered. He wrote with intensity, demanding attention. He would expect the same from you. Not shouting, not boasting, but speaking with such sharpness that silence follows. Most people are terrified of silence, so they rush to fill it. But silence in the aftermath of your words is not emptiness. It is tension. And tension is the birthplace of respect. Strength also reveals itself in how you handle emotion. Many believe that to be strong is to feel nothing, to be made of stone. But Nietzsche did not preach numbness. True strength is not the absence of feeling, but the command of it. It means you can feel deeply, yet remain sovereign in your response. When disrespected, you do not explode. You do not defend. You simply hold steady, waiting until your action is deliberate, precise, and undeniable. Weakness is being carried away by uncontrolled emotion. Strength is directing emotion into chosen action. One is chaos. The other is discipline. Consider the difference between crying in despair and crying with purpose. The first breaks you down. The second transforms you. The difference is awareness. Discipline does not strip you of humanity. It sharpens it. Weakness says, "I am just emotional." Strength replies, "I feel everything, but I decide my response." That distinction separates victimhood from sovereignty. And Nietzsche detested the culture of victimhood. To him, victimhood was slavery of the modern mind. Not chains on the body, but chains on thought, chains on identity. The endless retelling of tragedy, the weaponization of pain, the constant plea for sympathy, all of it, in his eyes, was a form of chosen weakness. He never denied suffering. He denied passivity. Pain exists for everyone, but some allow it to become the totality of their existence. They wear their wounds as if they are credentials. But pain was never meant to be a permanent identity. It was meant to be fire, to forge something greater. Scars should become armor, not excuses. The truth is harsh. The world does not care about what happened to you. It cares only about what you build despite it. If you remain fragile, you have surrendered to the story. If you emerge unshakable, then pain becomes your foundation. Nietzsche wrote that he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. The secret, however, is that your why is not waiting in some hidden place for you to discover. It is chosen. You carve it out of your days. You declare it, and then you uphold it with your actions. Once you choose a purpose, weakness loses its grip. Doubt becomes background noise. Distraction fades. Drama dissolves. Every action either serves your purpose or betrays it. That clarity is the beginning of liberation. Therefore, you must decide, what will you build? What will you serve? What will you refuse to tolerate even for another day? Write it. Speak it. Guard it. Because if you do not, the world will assign you a purpose. And that purpose will always be one that keeps you tame, polite, and forgettable. Nietzsche calls you away from that fate. He demands that you reclaim yourself, not through endless promises of transformation, but through the recognition that strength was never gone. It was buried, waiting for your courage to uncover it. By this point, you can already feel the tension within yourself. Something stirs, something old, something raw. That stirring is not the arrival of a new identity, but the return of what has always been there. The truth is that you are never weak by nature. You are conditioned into weakness. You are persuaded to trade your edge for safety, to exchange your instinct for belonging. Nietzsche understood this with piercing clarity. The greatest chains are not placed on the body, but on the mind. The stories you inherited, the quiet agreements you made with fear, are what keep you bent. To rise again is to confront those stories and break them. One of the deepest roots of weakness is the fear of being alone. From the earliest days, you are taught to seek belonging. School trained you to raise your hand for permission. Friends taught you to stay within the tribe. Family demanded you silence what was inconvenient. Relationships rewarded you for being agreeable, gentle, and unthreatening. Slowly you became addicted not to love, but to acceptance. That bland, shallow acceptance that requires you to shrink, to fold, to vanish, so that you could remain included. But Nietzsche would tell you with brutal honesty, unless you are willing to stand entirely alone, you will never truly meet yourself. Belonging comes with a cost, and that cost is authenticity. Most people are willing to pay it, surrendering their individuality to remain tolerated. But if you wish to become who you are meant to be, you must unlearn this addiction. You must build your own table instead of begging for a seat at another's. If no one joins you, then good more room for clarity, more space for your vision, more silence to sharpen your spirit. This is the first true upgrade, the choice of solitude over submission. Once you begin to step away from the craving for belonging, another question rises. Why do you procrastinate? Why do you sabotage yourself? Why do you delay what you know would make you stronger? Most people assume laziness. But Nietzsche would insist it is not laziness. It is loyalty, a hidden contract written in your psyche long ago. You dimmed your light because you learned that shining made people pull away. You hesitated because you learned that ambition brought punishment. You slowed yourself down because you feared the distance that strength might create between you and others. So you adapted. You taught yourself to delay, to soften, to explain, all in order to remain safe. But safety is not your purpose. Safety is the slow death of your potential. Nietzsche warned that the snake which cannot cast its skin must die. Weakness is precisely this, the refusal to evolve because you fear who you might lose if you do. Yet if you do not shed the old skin, then you remain trapped inside it, suffocated by your own resistance. To grow is to rip away the habits that have kept you small, even when it feels violent to do so. The people pleaser, the constant doubter, the compulsive translator of your emotions, all must go. This transformation is not abstract. It is tactical. Begin with your language. Every time you say, "I do not know," when you actually do, you fracture your certainty. Every time you say, "maybe," when you mean no, you cut into your own integrity. Every time you apologize for existing, for interrupting, for needing anything at all, you weaken your spine. Speak directly. Speak cleanly. Speak without unnecessary softness. People will accuse you of being rude. Allow them. Their protest is only a reflex. the panic of those accustomed to your smallness. They do not want you strong, because your strength reminds them of their own compromise. Then, move to your body. Weakness is visible in posture. You can see it in shoulders slumped forward, eyes cast downward, shallow breaths that tell the story of someone living as prey. Your frame tells the truth your words attempt to hide. So you must change your body until it matches the command you want to embody. Stand as though you are watched. Walk as though you expect to be followed. Sit as though you do not require permission. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. Presence is physical, and presence declares itself before a single word is spoken. But alignment requires belief. Ask yourself, what do you hold so deeply that you would walk away from anything that does not honor it? Write it, memorize it, carry it within your bones. Every action, every conversation, every silence must bend to this conviction. That is where certainty comes from. That is why presence radiates. And this is how weakness begins to dissolve, not by pretending to be strong, but by refusing to betray what you know is true. Victimhood must also be confronted. Nietzsche despised the modern tendency to glorify suffering, to turn pain into a permanent emblem of identity. When you cling to your wounds as if they define you, you chain yourself to weakness. You become loyal not to your potential, but to your struggle. The more you rehearse your trauma as your central story, the more you ensure that you remain trapped inside it. Nietzsche would call this a betrayal of life itself. Pain is inevitable, but surrendering to pain is voluntary. Your suffering is not meant to be paraded for sympathy. It is meant to be forged into strength. The world does not ask for endless retellings of your tragedies. It does not care about the details of your hardship nearly as much as you imagine. What it does notice is whether you rise in spite of those hardships. If pain leaves you bitter, fragile, and resentful, then it has conquered you. But if pain hardens you into clarity, into steadiness, into someone untouchable, then your past becomes your weapon rather than your cage. The same fire that burned you can be redirected to illuminate and fortify you. Nietzsche urged this shift. Scars are not chains, they are armor. Language itself is a battlefield. The words you use either build your spine or carve pieces out of it. Saying, "I survived," keeps your gaze backward, while declaring, "I became," turns your eyes forward. Saying, "I suffer," frames you as passive, while declaring, "I forge," frames you as active. Words are spells, and every time you speak, you reinforce a vision of yourself. If you speak weakness, you rehearse weakness. If you speak strength, you rehearse strength. Nietzsche's call was always to create, not to recite. To build something sharper, something more real, through the precision of your language. This leads us to the necessity of purpose. Nietzsche's observation that he who has a why to live can bear almost any how is not a mere aphorism. It is a command. Without a self-chosen purpose, you drift into purposes assigned by others, purposes designed to keep you small and obedient. Many wait for a grand revelation, for destiny to strike like lightning. But Nietzsche argued that purpose is not found by waiting. It is chosen deliberately. It is carved through decision. Once chosen, it shapes every act and kills hesitation. Purpose makes weakness intolerable. Consider how distractions lose their power once a real why has been claimed. Doubt shrinks into background noise. The dramas that once consumed you lose their appeal. Even pain becomes tolerable when it is framed as part of your chosen path. A strong purpose dissolves excuses. It removes the luxury of delay. When you know what you serve, every choice becomes simple. It either serves the why, or it betrays it. Weakness thrives in confusion. Strength thrives in clarity. Nietzsche's challenge is simple but severe. Decide. Decision is not the end, however. It is the beginning. You must embody the choice, live it daily, speak it into existence. If you do not, the world will decide for you. It will assign you roles of obedience, of politeness, of invisibility. The collective does not care about your individuality. It cares about your compliance. Nietzsche warned that if you fail to claim your life with force, society will mold you into a forgettable shape. Only a chosen purpose resists that molding. The return to strength is not about transformation into something new, but the rediscovery of what you always carried. You are not created to be endlessly soft, endlessly tolerant, endlessly silent. You were born to be sharp, to carry presence, to walk into rooms with a certainty that cannot be ignored. Weakness taught you to betray this. Purpose teaches you to reclaim it. Nietzsche demands not a new self, but the unveiling of the self that weakness buried. That is why once you glimpse this truth, you cannot return to ignorance. You cannot unknow it. From this moment forward, you face only two paths: to evolve or to lie. You either move into alignment with the strength that is now awake within you, or you pretend that you did not hear it. One path leads to the life Nietzsche would respect, a life of clarity, force, and unapologetic authenticity. The other path leads back into the fog, into the endless cycle of excuses and self-betrayal. But you know which path is yours, because once the call has been spoken, you cannot silence it again. Now the confrontation must move even deeper. Weakness is not only in the mind and in the language you use. It is also in the habits that quietly govern you. Nietzsche taught that the human being who does not command himself will inevitably be commanded by others. Every moment you hand away your authority through unexamined habit, you surrender a piece of your sovereignty. This surrender may seem harmless in the moment, but it compounds until you no longer realize how small you have become. Regaining strength requires reclaiming those daily actions that have long disguised themselves as harmless routines. Begin with attention. When you wake in the morning and immediately reach for the glow of a screen, you give away the throne of your mind before you have even stood. Your day has already been framed, not by your will, but by the endless noise of others. To reverse this, claim the morning as your own. Before opening a screen, open your lungs with a full breath. Before consuming words from strangers, speak one clear sentence of your own. Before you scroll, stand upright and let your body remind you that you are not prey. Weakness thrives in passivity. Strength grows in the deliberate act of beginning. Speech is the next domain. Most people weaken themselves every day by softening their words. They lower their voices so they do not seem threatening. They dilute their statements with endless qualifiers. They apologize for things that do not require apology. Each of these actions is a slow leak of power. Nietzsche's challenge is to cut off the leak. Speak without apology. State your belief directly. Do not smother your clarity in explanations meant to please. The silence that follows your statement is not emptiness. It is presence. Those who feel threatened by your clarity will call you rude, but in truth, they are disturbed because you no longer shrink. Emotion must also be reclaimed. The weak confuse strength with numbness, believing that the strong feel nothing. But Nietzsche's philosophy rejects this. Strength is not the absence of emotion, but the command of it. To feel fully and yet to act with precision, that is mastery. When insulted, the weak explode or crumble. The strong remain still until they choose a response that cuts exactly where it must. This discipline is not coldness. It is refinement. It is the difference between thrashing blindly and striking surgically. Weakness is emotion without awareness. Strength is emotion directed with purpose. You must also address the addiction to belonging. The need to be endlessly included is one of the most dangerous forms of weakness. Society rewards it because it creates obedient individuals who will never question. But Nietzsche demanded that the individual learn to stand alone. Solitude is not a curse, but a proving ground. When you can face the silence of your own company without fear, then you finally begin to meet yourself. If no one joins you, you lose nothing. The one who builds his own table does not need permission to sit. This will also require you to dismantle the psychological contracts you created long ago. Many of your self-sabotaging behaviors are not laziness, but secret loyalties. You kept yourself small so others would not feel diminished. You slowed yourself so others would not feel left behind. You dimmed your ambition because it once brought distance or punishment. These agreements may have been necessary in childhood, but as an adult, they enslave you. Nietzsche's command is clear. The old skin must be shed. The one who cannot shed it will die still carrying it. This shedding is violent, not gentle. You cannot peel away weakness politely. It must be torn from you. The people-pleaser must be silenced. The compulsive doubter must be dismissed. The endless second-guesser must be buried. Every time you hesitate, you betray yourself. Every time you dim your light, you lie. Nietzsche compared this to the snake casting off its skin. If it cannot release what no longer serves, it suffocates. To live, you must discard. To evolve, you must leave behind. Strength is ruthless in this regard, because weakness never loosens its grip willingly. And so the process of reclaiming yourself is not abstract motivation. It is the daily decision to no longer betray what you know to be true. It is in your mornings, in your words, in your posture, in your silence, in your choices. Each of these is an arena where you either command yourself or surrender yourself. Nietzsche demands the first. The choice is yours, but once you see where weakness hides, you can never again claim ignorance. You must act, or you must lie. Victimhood must die if strength is to live. Nietzsche loathed the way modern people clung to their tragedies, as though pain were a badge of honor. When you retell your wounds again and again, you create a cycle of loyalty to suffering. You remain tied to the weakest version of yourself. To Nietzsche, this was psychological slavery, a far more dangerous bondage than chains on the body. Physical chains can be broken, but the chains of identity forged by weakness hold you captive until you decide to shatter them. To glorify pain is to stay small. To transmute pain is to grow. Rewrite your story in stronger terms. Do not say, I was hurt. Say, I became untouchable. Do not say I carry trauma. Say I forge steel. Do not say I am anxious. Say, I own stillness. Every word you speak is a declaration of loyalty, either to weakness or to strength. Nietzsche understood words as tools of creation, not merely expressions of thought. If you describe yourself as fragile, you train yourself to be fragile. If you describe yourself as resilient, you build resilience. Weakness feeds on the language of surrender. Strength feeds on the language of power. Posture and presence must reflect this transformation. Weakness sits slouched, breath shallow, gaze lowered. It moves as prey, waiting for permission to act. Strength does not demand attention through noise, but through certainty. It walks with deliberate pace. It stands as though it expects to be seen. It breathes deeply, as though air belongs to it. Presence is not arrogance, but alignment, and when alignment is real, others sense it without a word spoken. Nietzsche insisted that the individual who commands himself radiates authority effortlessly, while the one who betrays himself radiates weakness just as clearly. But alignment requires a principle deeper than convenience. Ask yourself, what belief will you hold so firmly that you would abandon anything that insults it? Write it, repeat it, carry it. Let it bleed into every decision. This principle becomes your fortress. Without it, you drift with the demands of the tribe. With it, you remain rooted even when storms rage. Weakness is constant negotiation with the world. Strength is the refusal to compromise your core. Nietzsche did not ask for politeness. He asked for integrity at all costs. Once this principle is chosen, belonging loses its grip. You no longer beg for acceptance. You no longer shrink to fit. You no longer apologize for your edge. If no one stands with you, you remain whole. If the crowd rejects you, you remain intact. Nietzsche would remind you that the individual who dares to stand alone is the only one who can truly create. The tribe produces only copies. The solitary spirit produces the original. When you are no longer afraid of solitude, you are finally dangerous, and that is precisely what society fears most. Dangerous does not mean chaotic or violent. It means unshakable. It means that no opinion can bend you, no criticism can silence you, no rejection can strip you of your path. To be dangerous is to be untouchable by the petty demands of conformity. Weakness seeks to be agreeable, to keep the peace, to avoid disapproval. Strength chooses truth, even when truth unsettles. Nietzsche's entire philosophy drives you toward this danger, because only the dangerous can resist being consumed by the mediocrity of the collective. By now you know the truth. Weakness was never your natural state. It was training, conditioning, agreements made with fear. Strength has been within you the entire time, buried under hesitation, disguised as politeness, suffocated by passivity. Once you have seen it, you cannot unsee it. Once you have heard the call, you cannot return to silence. From here, you either evolve or you lie. Evolution requires daily decision. Lying requires pretending you did not know. But you do know, and that knowledge is now your standard. So guard it. Guard it like your life depends on it, because it does. When you walk into a room, carry certainty. When you speak, speak with clarity. When you feel, feel with command. When you choose, choose with alignment. This is not the creation of a new self. This is the return to the self that weakness buried. Nietzsche would respect not the loudest, not the richest, not the most praised, but the one who refuses to betray himself. Become that one.